Hello and welcome to No Worries Biology. My name is Anja Doyle, and in this video I would like to talk about what to look out for and what to pay attention to when writing texts. We all want our text to present our ideas in such a way that readers can easily follow and retrace our line of thinking. So in this video I want to focus on how we can make it easier for our readers to deal with what we write. I will talk about specific tools that can and should be used to make the content of our writing more coherent and thus easier to understand. High school students in particular are often asked to write a text, for example, to answer a question or to fulfill a certain task. In my role as a teacher, I have often had the following experience. After I was done correcting a text which a student of mine had written, I discussed it with the student and I pointed out which aspects or connections were still missing in the text in my opinion. And every so often that student would answer, "Yes, but that's what I meant." Well, here we face the dilemma. The student went to great lengths to write a text with which he or she wanted to convey a certain idea, which I as the reader did not pick up on. This is not only annoying, but in tests and exams, it often means that you do not reach the full score. And of course, my students and I are not the only ones who have ever been in such a situation. In 1990, two US linguists, George D. Gopin and Judith A. Swan, published an article which to this day continues to enjoy great renown and popularity. This article is called "The Science of Scientific Writing." In this article, they stated that the content or the message of a prose text is not what the author intended to say in it, but what the reader takes from it. In other words, 1-0 for me in the dilemma between my students and I that I just described a minute ago. In their article, Gopin and Swan then discuss a set of strategies that can be used in writing to help the reader interpret the text and increase the likelihood that the reader will understand the text in the right way. That is, in the way the writer meant it to be interpreted. And that is exactly what the following quote means. If the reader is to grasp what the writer means, the writer must understand what the reader needs. What the reader needs. What kind of things could a reader need so that he or she can understand my text in the way I meant it? Well, these needs of the reader do not refer to a nice cup of tea to have standing next to my essay to feel really comfortable and to be well disposed towards my essay. No, that's nonsense, of course. What these needs of the reader refer to are certain subtle guidelines within the text. Guidelines which make it easier for the reader to follow the outlined train of thought. And in order to provide these guidelines, the writer has to consider and, if possible, influence what goes on in the reader's mind while he or she is reading the text. When we read something, we are not completely unbiased. While we read something, we automatically form expectations about what's coming next or how is the text going to continue. And if these expectations are not fulfilled, then we are, metaphorically speaking, stopped in our tracks. We are perplexed, confused. We have some difficulty comprehending the structure of the text. And that is precisely what a writer should try to prevent from happening when he or she is composing a text. So let's look at some specific tools or strategies that can help to guide a reader in following our train of thought and not to get confused. Conjunctions and adverbs. These two classes of words are a very effective and easy to use antidote for the just described confusion of the reader. They help to indicate in which context sentences and subclauses relate to each other, thereby guiding the reader's expectations in the right direction. They figuratively take the reader by the hand and make it so much easier for him or her to transition from one sentence to the next and to follow the presented train of thought. Some examples for such adverbs are however and nevertheless. They inform us that whatever is coming next stands in contrast to what has been said before. Therefore and thus and consequently make clear that whatever is coming next is a result of what has been said before. Moreover, and furthermore, and besides, indicate that what is coming next is additional support for an argument that was made before, etc. I also mentioned conjunctions, and more specifically, I'm mainly referring to subordinating conjunctions, which connect independent and dependent clauses in such a way that they specify the relationship between these clauses. Examples include because. The dependent clause that follows will give a reason for whatever is talked about in the independent clause. If. Here we can expect a condition to be stated. And although we know that the content of the dependent clause will be a concession or an apparent contradiction to whatever the independent clause states. To get a better understanding of how these conjunctions and adverbs act as transitions between clauses and sentences, let's have a look at an example that is derived from an actual text. Computer games are part of everyday life for 80% of adolescents. More than just a few adults also use computer games. They remain disconcerting to many parents. Teenagers feel misunderstood. They enjoy distinguishing themselves from the adult world. Even though we may realize that these phrases probably all have something to do with each other, it is difficult to follow the line of reasoning because I sabotaged the original textbook text by deleting all conjunctions and adverbs that indicated the logical relationships between those sentences. The original text is much easier to understand because our understanding is supported by the guiding hand of conjunctions and adverbs. Computer games are a part of everyday life for 80% of adolescents. Although more than just a few adults also use computer games, they remain disconcerting to many parents. For this reason, young people feel misunderstood on the one hand, but they also enjoy distinguishing themselves from the adult world on the other hand. Wow, what a difference. So our first important tool to make texts more understandable is to use conjunctions and adverbs to clarify the context in which sentences and clauses relate to each other. No Worries Biology offers a document with the same title as this video. It contains a list of such subordinating conjunctions and adverbs. I believe that it can be immensely helpful to keep such a list handy while writing texts in case you are searching for a suitable transition from one clause to the next. As I already mentioned before, when reading a text, we are never completely unbiased. Linguists discovered that we are all kind of programmed to expect that in written or spoken language, we are first presented with an old or already known piece of information, before this old information then gets complemented by new information. Typically, this is referred to as the known-new contract. This is an unwritten contract, of course, between the speaker or writer and the listener or reader. And this contract specifies the order in which information is to be presented. First the old, then the new. So when we write something, it is quite advisable to keep this contract in mind in order not to confuse the reader unnecessarily. In languages like English and German, which usually start with a subject, this means the old information is located in subject position at the beginning of the sentence, and the new information is contained in the predicate or the rest of the sentence. Let's have a look at an example to develop a better understanding for this concept. This example is also taken from a widely used biology textbook. Here we go. Long-term smoking can lead to emphysema. Emphysema is the loss of elasticity and eventual breakdown of lung tissue. This condition makes breathing difficult. So what is happening here? These sentences are taken from the chapter about the respiratory system, and the first sentence introduces us to a disease called emphysema and its cause. Now that we know about this disease, it is mentioned again as the subject of the second sentence. So it is now information we already possess, aka known information. And we are ready to learn something new. In this example, we are learning about the specific characteristics of this disease. This new information of the second sentence again serves as known information in the third sentence, kind of like an anchor to which yet another new information can be tied. The subject of the third sentence is this condition, and of course it refers to having less elastic and overall reduced amounts of lung tissue. And as new information, we learn that having difficulty breathing is a consequence of these bodily changes. All right, let's have a quick look at a second example to make it absolutely clear that texts which are following the principles of the known-new contract, or in other words, texts which are written with the insight of what the readers need, are quite easy to comprehend. Maize has been cultivated since the time of the Incas, Mayas, and Aztecs. The types of maize that we grow today produce the highest grain yield of all cereal crops, and they also produce the largest amounts of leaves. These properties have made maize the most important crop in America. So, the first sentence introduces us to maize and its history. The second sentence continues with the same subject, so the known information stays the same, but we learn something else about it. Namely, that today maize is a very productive plant. The third sentence uses this new information of the second sentence as information that is now known to us. It starts with these properties, which obviously refer to the just mentioned productivity of maize. And the sentence continues with new information, have made maize the most important crop in America. And following the same principle, we could now easily tie onto this new information in a fourth newly invented sentence. In the United States of America, maize is called corn. If you want to take advantage of these principles while writing, you can choose between different patterns that are available for linking new information to old information. The first of the two main patterns is called chained, and we have already seen examples of this pattern in the text passages we have looked at before. In the chain pattern, the new information given in one sentence becomes the known information in the next sentence, about which we can then learn something new. Here's an example. Plants, like most animals, are made up of organs, tissues, and cells. An organ consists of several types of tissues that together carry out a particular function. A tissue is a group of cells consisting of one or more cell types that together perform a specialized function. The first sentence introduces us to the topic of plants, and we learn about their parts. That is the new information, and we are going to symbolize it with the letter A. A then becomes the known information in the second sentence, about which we learn B. Here, that organs consist of several types of tissues, and so on. I am using the letter B to represent this new information. Sentence 3 picks up on B by putting one of these tissues into subject position, where it is now known information, and we are given yet another information, C, namely what those tissues are. And if the pattern continued, we would learn D as new information about C in the next sentence. Another common pattern for linking known and new information keeps the subject of subsequent sentences constant. And in each sentence, we add some new information to the same known aspect. So the first sentence tells us B about A. In the second sentence, we learn C about A, and so on. Let's look at an example. I'm just going to read it out loud, as by now those colored markings should be pretty self-explanatory. Charles Darwin was born into a wealthy family in England in 1809, and his early life was unremarkable. Charles was never at the top of his class and professed to hate schoolwork. Nonetheless, at 16, he went to the University of Edinburgh to study medicine, following his father's footsteps. He was bored, though, and left at the end of his second year. A pattern closely related to the constant pattern is the so-called derived pattern. Here the topic of consecutive sentences stays almost the same, but it gets narrowed down. So after a topic has been introduced, a subsequent sentence then only has a subgroup or subset of the original topic as its subject, and so on. Here's an example for the derived pattern for linking known and new information. All organisms require nitrogen to make amino acids and nucleic acids. Many different forms of nitrogen occur naturally in the biosphere. The first sentence introduces us to nitrogen as the topic of this paragraph, and in the second sentence, it gets picked up again, and we learn something new about it, specifically that it occurs naturally on Earth in many different forms. So far, this is in line with the constant pattern. The text continues. Nitrogen gas makes up 78% of the Earth's atmosphere. So now we are not talking about nitrogen in general anymore, but about one specific form of nitrogen, nitrogen gas. And we learned something new about nitrogen gas. The text goes on. Nitrogen-containing substances such as ammonia, nitrate ions, and nitrite ions are found in soil, in the wastes produced by many organisms, and in dead and decaying organic matter. Here, we are still talking about nitrogen, but about another subset of the original topic, nitrogen-containing substances. And as new information, we learn where they occur. So, the nitrogen gas in the third sentence and the nitrogen-containing substances in the fourth sentence were topics derived from the original topic of the first and second sentence. Great. Those are the main patterns for linking known and new information in such a way that this information can easily be processed by a reader. The chained pattern and the constant pattern plus the derived pattern as a variation of the constant pattern. The worksheet accompanying this video, which I already mentioned before, also contains a summary of these three patterns for linking information, as well as the examples that we just looked at. You can find this worksheet by going to www.noworriesbiology.com, then select the online shop and type the title of this video into the search function. And there it is. One more important remark regarding these patterns for linking information in a text that we talked about in this video. You don't have to pick and choose and then stubbornly stick with just one of these patterns. On the contrary, most texts are actually a combination not only of these patterns, but also of both strategies we discussed in here. The known-new contract, as well as the use of adverbs and conjunctions to create a text that flows nicely. So, while writing, remember to apply both these strategies to help the reader recognize the logical structure of your argument and the relationship in which sentences stand to each other. Such a systematic and logical connection between sentences in a text is called coherence. And coherence is what distinguishes a well-composed text from sentences that were just randomly strung together. Your readers will appreciate it. That's it for today. I hope that this video contained some helpful ideas and guidance for improving your writing and for composing coherent texts. At www.noworriesbiology.com, you can find a wide range of materials on biological topics and fostering language usage in biology. Just have a look around and see you next time.